Good morning, everyone. I made it to the room. Hopefully, I've been joined by the people who need to be here. I see Dr. Johnson. I see Miss Robinson. I see was that Miss Gray? Yep, there's Miss Gray. Gerard. I'm calling out names that I know, so if I don't call your name, don't be slighted. I just don't know. So it looks like we're a little bit off schedule. But that's okay. We're going to make it up, and it will be not a problem. I'm definitely going to give the speakers the full amount to speak. So let me just go ahead and get us started. I'm Dr. Sherry Painter. I am the Division Chair for Natural Mathematical Sciences at Lemoyne College. I'm also serving as the Interim Vice President for Academic Affairs. And so, as most people do in many jobs, we wear many hats. And so today, the hat that I'm wearing is the Facilitator for Breakout Session E. And our title is Building a Strong Foundation. And so I'm going to introduce to you today our moderator, and then she will introduce our first speaker. So our moderator today is Avion Robinson. She is a senior biology major at Lemoyne College, and she actually attended the first SCMS Meharry conference that we had last year. And so I'm excited that she's come back, and she's actually a participant this year. By serving as our moderator. So, Ms. Robinson, I will let you take it away.
Thank you for the introduction, Dr. Painter. Our first speaker is a true inspiration. Dr. Amber Johnson is a Jackson, Mississippi native and a very proud graduate of the Lemoyne College with her BS in computer science. She also received her MS of computer science at Jackson State University. And on August 3rd of 2019, Dr. Johnson became the first Black woman to graduate with a PhD from Purdue University in computer science. She is now the owner and creator of Keynote Life, an inspirational apparel brand that encourages others to be who they are, no matter where they are. And she is also a software engineer at Northrop Grumman.
Hello, everyone. I'm so happy and just honored to be here that Dr. Painter invited me to kind of, pour back into the community that poured so much into me. So I don't have slides. You probably are happy about that. I don't have slides, and I kind of wanted this to be a conversation, even though I'm the only one talking right now. So just a little bit about me. I'm a complete extrovert. My folks tell me I've never met a stranger, so I totally embrace that. I definitely learned to embrace that. And I really like connecting with people. And I believe that, being you, who you are, what you can be, your potential is already in you. And sometimes it just needs to be activated, whether it's through something you see or through a seed and that's planted in you, or someone else sees something in you. And so I kind of got in trouble a lot when I was a kid because I always asked why when people would tell me things. So, when we got ready to pray over our food, people would say Jesus wept, and I'm like, why? Like, Jesus didn't weep because he was about to eat. Like, it didn't make sense to me. So I was always asking why. So it's, kind of a smart mouth, at least that's what I was told. I knew that, when I was younger, I knew I was going to college. And I knew I was going to college because I was going to Hillman. I was going to Hillman College. I couldn't wait. Somehow I figured Whitley and Dwayne Wayne would still be there. But I would find out later that this was actually a fictitious place that Bill Cosby made up for the Cosby Show and for a different world. But I knew I was going to Hillman because everybody there looked like me. They were in school, they were studying, they ended up being lawyers and doctors, and I just thought it was so amazing. And so I knew I was going to college. So I knew that, but the high school that I went to was actually at the time one of the worst high schools in Mississippi. We were actually about to be taken over by the state. I mean, we didn't have any books. Teachers just kind of Xerox things and taught us with the materials that they had. So we kind of just made away. And I didn't realize how terrible it was until I actually I told somebody when I got older. And but I knew I was going to college because of Hillman. I mean, my folks went to college as well, but I knew it. And so I also played sports. And so I went to college. And as I said, I'm an extrovert, so met a lot of people, participated in a lot of organizations. Just, the community at the HBCUs I went to, it was so nurturing and just amazing. I remember walking into the president's office at the time, Johnny B. Watson, and he had this thing where he said his door was always open. And so I walked in one day because I wanted to see if his door was open. And I happened to walk in and he was like frustrated with his computer. And what do you know? Computer scientist walks in and helping with his computer. And we ended up talking and establishing a relationship where he would later write me a recommendation letter to grad school. So, just, being myself and talking to people, getting to know people and kind of networking. But while I was in college, closer to my last year in college, somebody asked me, what was I going to do next? And I really didn't know. And, at the time I needed to do a co-op, which was kind of an internship to fulfill a credit to graduate. And my cousin previously had a professor who was at Mississippi Valley State University. He was conducting research. And so she put me in contact with him and I ended up going there with Dr. Charles Bland. And I didn't know what I was walking into because I didn't know what an internship was and I didn't know what research was. And so I kind of held on to everything Dr. Bland was saying. This was amazing to me that I could, there were these problems that I didn't actually have to find an answer to, but I could keep working towards and I can contribute to the body of knowledge of that. And so I bothered Dr. Bland over the weekends. I would meet with him at McCullough's and coffee shops to learn about this. And I was actually the only person in my research group that was doing work. I was the only one that was doing work and I was frustrated about this, but something just told me to keep going. And so later I got back to school and a professor introduced me to Dr. Painter, who later she would take me to a TL SAMP conference at UT Knox. And I was just excited to be there. I had never been to a research conference, didn't know what it was about. I just knew I had this poster and I was supposed to present it. And so I remember sitting at the awards banquet the last morning of the conference, and we are, my subject area comes up and they're announcing the winners. And so, I didn't care about, I didn't think about winning. I was just happy to be there. So third place comes up and I don't hear my name and I think to myself like, dang, you didn't even get third place, And so I kind of stopped paying attention. And at some point I looked up and everybody at my table was looking at me and I'm like, what are y'all staring at? And they're like, get up. And I'm like, y'all not standing up? Why? I'm like, you won. So I get up and they announced me as the first place winner. And so at that moment, I thought like, wow, I can kind of do something, like this is pretty cool. And so I wanted more. I wanted to do this thing, whatever this research was. And so I kept in contact with Dr. Bland, who became one of my mentors. And he asked me what I was doing after I graduated. And I just, was like, get a master's. And so he told me about a program at Jackson State called the LS-MAMP program, LS-MAMP Bridge to the Doctorate, which would pay for your master's. They give you a stipend and they prepare you for the PhD. Hadn't even thought about PhD. In fact, Dr. Bland was the first Black PhD that I'd ever met, and he was a PhD in computer science. And so I didn't apply for the program. And Dr. Bland calls me, closer to the deadline, and he, Johnson, did you apply to the program? You didn't ask me for a recommendation letter. And I'm like, no, Dr. Bland, I think I'm gonna do something else. And he keeps pushing, and I finally tell him, I break and I tell him, I don't have the GPA. Somehow, I was a scholar all throughout high school, star athlete, and I didn't have the GPA to get into this program after I graduated from undergrad. And he told me something that would stick with me to this day. He asked me if was I in the program? Had I been accepted? And I said, no, I didn't apply. He said, well, if you apply and you don't get in, then will you be in the program? And I said, no. He said, exactly, so apply. And essentially what he was saying was, you miss 100% of the shots that you don't take. So I applied for the program and I'm like, I'm not getting into this program. I don't know what Dr. Bland is talking about. And what do you know? I get into the program. In that program, I was able to do a study abroad in China. I did research across the country and I had a very, very nice stipend. that I was able to live off of. And I met a lot of people. In fact, I met someone in California on a train, because I don't meet strangers. And I meet somebody on a train, and they told me about a fellowship for minority students that were studying in grad school. So I kind of kept that in the back of my head. So fast forward, and I go to Purdue on a visitation, just to visit Purdue. Someone told me about a program, so I visit Purdue. And I remember being in the car with graduate students on the way to campus, and they asked what I wanted to major in. And I told them computer science. And it's like everything in the world just stood still. And this guy looks at me, he goes, computer science? Black people don't get PhDs in computer science? And I'm like, what you mean? And I knew that was a lie, because Dr. Bland was a Black PhD. Like, I saw this was absolutely a thing. And for him to tell me that, like, essentially like Black people couldn't do this. And so I ended up going to Purdue, and I went to Purdue full scholarship, fellowship, which paid for up to 6 years of my PhD. And it was hard, it was, Michelle Obama said, being the first Black anything is hard. And, that's a really heavy statement that embodies so much. And so I had gone into an environment that wasn't initially created for me. This environment hadn't seen anyone like me, not only because I was a Black woman in computer science, but because I'm me. And I realized there was something unique about me. So all the weirdness that my family, thinks about me, and that I just talk to strangers, and that actually, led me on the path of becoming the representation that I saw in Hillman as a kid. And so I remember, walking into campus, there's a stereotype with computer scientists that we are antisocial and socially awkward. We stare at computers all day. We have a certain look about us, and we do certain things. I don't fit any of that. I walked into I remember walking to the admissions office the first day in our department. I'm like, hey y'all, this Southern girl, this Southern drawl, and I made connections. I would go and just check on people and talk to people, because this was the community that I was a part, that I come from. In my home, in my schools, my mentors, I'd always been around people who were nurturing in a community-like environment. Plus I was a point guard. And so, I was used to being in like a team type environment. And so I found that there weren't a lot of programs for me, or, spaces for me. And so I created that community. I created, programs and organizations on campus that were geared towards community and students talking to each other and getting to know each other. And it turned out to be really awesome. But even in building all of that, I also remember, having a hard time and just needing some inspiration. And so I started looking up first Black people to do things. And one of the ones that stood out was Dr. John Carlos. He was a 1968 Olympic runner who stood up. He had the black fist, the black glove on his fist, and he was totally ridiculed for that. And so I put that picture on my phone, and I would look at it every time I unlocked my phone. And that was inspiration for me that, somebody had done this, somebody Black had traveled this path, had pioneered this path, that, and it was possible. So a few weeks later, John Carlos visits Purdue. Dr. John Carlos visits Purdue. So I attend, and he's giving this inspirational speech. And a part of the speech, he says, it's for you to do, pick up the ball and dribble. And I'm like, me? And so he says it again. I stood up as if I was like in a backwoods Baptist church in Mississippi. And I'm like, yes, and I'm shouting and everything. So I ended up afterwards, I stayed around and I talked to Mr. Carlos, and it was the most amazing conversation. And I told him about the picture on my phone, and I said, I was gonna buy this picture once I got a job, but for now, it's gonna be on my phone. So he says, you know what, I tell you what, you send me an email and I'll send you a picture. I'm like, okay. So fast forward, I'm sitting at my desk some months later, I just taken a final exam, and I'm thinking, this is it. Like, yep, I flunked out. They're gonna put me out of here, I'm going home. And I'm almost in tears sitting at my desk, and I get an email from this kid that says, I have something for you. I'm like, okay, I don't know who you are, but sure. He walks into my office and he says, my grandfather sent you something. And I opened up this box, and it's a poster from John Carlos. Sorry, I'm getting emotional. It's a poster from John Carlos, and it had, had some inspirational words on it about, keep shining, keep pushing through. And I held my head up. And it was moments like that. Granted, this is John Carlos, but there were moments like that where when I felt like I couldn't do it, someone stepped in and planted a seed or encouraged me to keep going. I'm not sure how much time I have. Somebody raise a hand or something to go over too long.
You got about 3 minutes left.
Okay. So then I go into my research. So during the second year of my program, my aunt passed away. I was very close to her, and she passed away from COPD. And eventually I was really curious about the disease. She was diagnosed the year before I was born. So she actually lived 30 years with this disease that people don't live as long with. And so I was inspired. I was led to, do research on this. And my advisor didn't do healthcare research. No one in my department did this. And so I was determined to figure out a way, and I did. So I put together all my skills that I'd gotten with sports and, people planting seeds. And I reached out to some people, and all the things that I needed, the data, the doctors, the engineers, kind of just came together. And I put together this team and was able to pioneer my own research. And so, I didn't realize that all the skills that I was picking up along the way, being able to network, taking a chance and taking opportunities, listening to those people that were pointing to me, how, important that would be on my journey. And even with graduating and becoming the first Black woman to graduate with a PhD in computer science, I kind of held that to me, it's fine. I didn't really want to talk about it. But as time has gone on, I realized how important it is to share that story. And, this started out with me looking at Hillman, a fictitious school, looking at this representation of these Black people on TV who were getting degrees. And, it turned into me being the representation for somebody else. So that's my story.
Dr. Johnson, thank you. You didn't tell me I was going to need tissues in this session. I'm so proud of you, and I'm so happy to be able to call you Dr. Johnson. So if you can hang on, the question session will be at the end here in a little bit, and we will still keep on track we will finish at 12:15 to go into the closing session for the last 15 minutes. So some of you may be in the session and you might be saying, well, wait, I thought I came to the chemistry session, and she's been talking about computer science all along. So I wanted to assure you, you are in the right session, but everything that Dr. Johnson has just shared with you is completely universal, and her subject matter just happens to be computer science. So I definitely wanted to bring her in and let her speak to you guys as just an inspiration and thinking about how to apply these things as you're moving forward. So I'm going to go ahead. Oh, wait, my timer just went off. Sorry, y'all. I don't know how to do this. Technology stuff. I need some help. Okay, so I'm going to shift into the demonstration session, and this session is supposed to be about 15 minutes, but I'm going to truncate it so that we can make sure that everybody can get their session in. But so are you all seeing me on the screen? Can y'all see me? Or just I need for
Yes, we see you.
My screen. You can see me?
Yes.
Okay, good, because I'm not seeing me. I need to change the view or something. Oh, there we are. Okay. So we are going, the title of the demo that I'm going to do is called H2O, like OHO. And it's just, we're going to talk about some chemical properties of water. And so we're going to get your chemistry in right here. So I did this on purpose. So I have this water that has not been opened because I've done this before for people and they're like, I don't think that's water. So legit, this is brand new opening. I don't know if you heard it open or not, but I'm going to pour a little bit of this water into this little cup here, just so I can get to it easier. And then I'm going to show you this instrument that I'm going to use. This is an official instrument that you can buy in any kitchen, well, any Walmart or whatever. But this is to like baste turkeys with, or chickens or whatever. You know, you can actually scoot it under the skin and you can get the juices in there. But I'm going to take the needle off for this. So I took the needle off for this. So this is, you're going to be blown away. I'm just telling you this. And you're going to want to do it for your friends. So I'm letting you know, any kind of dropper, you can use a syringe, or you can use a dropper, anything like that will work. So let me change my view on this. Okay, so any kind of dropper will work on this. And then I have a penny. So this is just a regular penny. You can see in my camera. And I'm going to change over to a webcam, to a webcam here in just a minute, so that you can see it very, very much up close. But I'm going to suck some of the water up in this syringe because I want to show you something here. And again, I'm going to get really close here in just a minute, but so this doesn't drip on my computer. All right, so I don't know how well you can see this or not, but let's see if I can do it this way. Get in front of it. All right, so can you see the drop that's hanging off of this? Can you see it? I see Avion shaking her head. All right, so they're kind of small drops, but here's what I want you to do. In the chat box, if you can go to the chat box, I want you to tell me how many drops of water you think I can land on the head of this penny without it falling over. So just how many drops of water will fit on the head of this penny. So in the chat box, if you'll take a second and put some numbers in there for me. I'm going to wait just a second. Okay, so we got a 5, a 5, a 7, a 6, an 8. This is like the Price is Right, right? You're going to be closest without going over. We got a 10, 6, 20. All right. 50, says Christopher Fitzpatrick. All right. That's ambitious. 7, 15, another 50. All right. Okay, so that's a bunch of good answers, and they range all the way from 5 to 50. So I'm going to switch over my camera and see what we can see here. All right, so try to get this penny in view really well. Okay, can y'all see the penny? Y'all see the penny now on my webcam? All right, so we're going to start doing this, and we're going to count. Y'all can, you want to take yourself off mute and you can count with me, or we're going to count together. But all right, so we're going to start doing this. I probably should put my glasses on so I can make sure I hit the head of the penny right. That's good. Okay, so here we go. Here we go with 1. Okay, so that's 1 drop. We'll speed it up here a little bit. 2, 3, 4, 5. So we can definitely get 5 on it, right? So we sorry to whoever said 5. We're going to pass you up. 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. All right, so we've got 10, so we passed up a bunch of other people. See if we can hit 15. 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. So we got to 15, right? Is this in focus? Yeah, y'all can see that good, right? Okay, 15. All right, well, we're going to keep going. 16, 17, 18, 19, 20. We're at 20. How much further do you think we can go? We got a ways to get to 50. I don't know if I can get 30 more drops on this. Let's see. So we're at 30. Here's 31. Drop. 32. 33. Whoa, here we go. 34. 35. Still holding on. 36. 37. 38. 39. See it wobbling? 40. Whoa, got 40. Let's keep going. 41. 42. 42. I didn't quite get 50. I have gotten 50 once before, but 42. So what do y'all think about that? Those of you who said 5 and 6 and 10, we got 42 drops of water on that penny. Let me change my camera back so I can talk to you and you don't have to look at my hands. All right, so how is that? How is that we got 42 drops of water on a penny? Did you see how it kind of made that dome? Yeah, y'all see that, how it made that dome? Let me change my view so I can see all of y'all shaking your heads at me. So again, I'm just going to take a few minutes to talk about this. So does anybody know what this is? Anybody know what that is? It's molecular models. If you've taken organic chemistry, you might have seen these. The red ball represents oxygen, and the two white ones represent hydrogen. And so that would make H2O, right, which is water. Very good. People are telling me water molecules. And so this is a water molecule in representation in theory, right? And so water molecules have a hydrogen bonded to an oxygen bonded to another hydrogen. And this bond right here, the hydrogen to the oxygen, is a covalent bond, right? So that means they share electrons. And that means that it's an intramolecular bond. It's a bond within the same molecule. But the cool thing about water is that it hydrogen bonds. And so that's not, I don't mean hydrogen bonded to oxygen as hydrogen bond. Hydrogen bonding happens between two water molecules. And so it turns out that the hydrogen of one atom is attracted to the oxygen of another water atom because the hydrogen is partially positive and the oxygen is partially negative. So just like you have magnets and opposites attract, same thing happens with water, with hydrogen bonding. So hydrogen bonding is an intermolecular interaction, which means between two molecules. And so as I was adding water to that penny, you were seeing it was creating that dome, right? And so the water molecules were actually more attracted to each other than they were anything else. And the water molecules on the surface kept pulling in closer and closer to each other. So that's what even made that dome kind of go over that penny. And so hydrogen bonding is important for a lot of things. And just to focus on a few, one is the DNA, right? Your DNA that makes you who you are. If we didn't have hydrogen bonding, we would not have the double helix that Watson and Crick discovered, right? Because the hydrogen bonding happens between the nitrogenous base pairs and makes the actual, and I could have done this with slides, but you don't want to hear slides. So anyway, hydrogen bonding is super important in your life. We wouldn't exist without it. So I could go on and talk more about it. I'm gonna just mention this. Have you ever seen the little bugs that scoot along the water, like the surface of the water? Yeah, the little bugs can scoot along the surface of the water, and that's because of surface tension, and surface tension is created by hydrogen bonding. So there's your little chemistry dose for today. I'm going to shift it back over to Miss Avion Robinson so she can introduce our next speaker, who will tell you a little bit about the chemistry that she has had in her life, and we'll take it from there. So Miss Robinson.
That was a very nice presentation. Our next speaker,
light for today.
Yeah, just a little bit. Our next presenter is Miss Bernadette Gray. She is the Managing Director of Transportation and Operational Solutions at FedEx, and she's been there since 2007. Her work experience includes customer service, process improvement, quality management, service metrics, and weights and research. Ms. Bernadette has also spent 22 years in the chemical industry, holding progressive leadership positions in engineering, recruitment, and plant operations, sales, marketing, and customer service. So she's held a lot of positions and a lot of hats. She is also a certified Six Sigma Black Belt and is the ASQ Manager of Quality and Organizational Excellence. Ms. Bernadette holds a BS in Chemical Engineering from the University of Tennessee at Knoxville and an MBA from Tulane University. She is also married with a 15-year-old daughter.
Well, thank you, Ms. Robinson. And I'd like to thank Dr. Painter for inviting me to be a part of this conversation. I do want to share a little bit about my lived experience, and there have been lots of positions in there. And I'll start though with the benefits of having an engineering degree, tell you about how I got into chemical engineering, as well as tell you how it worked for me. So as I looked over life, I came up with 3 statements that I want to make sure that I play out with you guys. So one is, although I may not know my final destination, if I keep moving forward, then I'm going in the right direction. Secondly, I am not my circumstance. Where I start in life does not define where I finish. And thirdly, to get what I have never gotten, I must do some things that I've never done. So keep those in mind as I reflect. And engineering has afforded me just some tremendous opportunities. And when you think about the roles that Ms. Robinson just shared, that is because of my engineering degree. And the chemical engineering degree was quite helpful in that. So I started with a bachelor's from UT Knoxville, as was just mentioned. And this has afforded me to sit at the table with CEOs of multi-billion-dollar companies. I've been able to travel to 46 out of the 50 US states. I've also traveled throughout North America. I've gone Central America, Africa, and Europe, and actually had an opportunity to spend a month in Budapest, Hungary, consulting with a non-government agency. And that was all at the expense of my current employer, FedEx. When I was a child, I did not dream of any of this. I had no idea. I didn't hear the term engineer until probably the junior of my high school year. So I dreamed, and I wouldn't say truly a dream, but thought about I wanted to be a teacher because that's what I saw African Americans doing at this time. And I will date myself. I graduated from high school 40 years ago. So a lot of the things that you guys see now and enjoy, those were just not available to me. So I want those of you who don't know what you want to do yet to not feel bad about that. I mean, it's great if you have identified exactly what you want to do and you know how to get there. But for those who don't, if you're starting with an engineering degree, that is a great pit stop because that can open the doors to so many other things. And over time, I've learned how to tap into a divine power and be guided. And I want you to know that every step may not be prescribed, but if you are open and you can achieve so much more, you will explore so much growth and opportunity from that self-discovery. So I have been, I've encountered people and situations that have helped me to know that I'm on the right track, whether I still stay in the current job or I need to be thinking about doing something else. But even now, with 35 years on the journey, I'm still defining, excuse me, what my ultimate endpoint is. So don't think that because you don't know that that's a bad thing. It's okay. Time will help reveal. And I chose engineering, not because I had been thinking about it forever. As I said, I didn't learn about it until later, but I had an opportunity. I had a wonderful math teacher, and so often there's someone special in your life who can bring something to you. And she brought an opportunity for me to attend a minority introduction to engineering program at Auburn University. And I spent 2 weeks there the summer between junior and senior year, and I had a chance to at least become familiar with the different types of engineering. And for whatever reason, civil came top of mind. So I'm just thinking civil. But anyway, when I got back to school in that senior year, Mr. Fred Brown from the University of Tennessee, Knoxville, came to my high school looking for engineering, or looking for candidates for his minority engineering scholarship program. I had taken the requisite math and science classes and had done well, and was invited to come and talk with him. And he told me about the scholarship where it was full academic ride, but it also had a co-op component. And I'm from a small town in Alabama, raised by a single mother with, I had 6 siblings, and we did not have the financial wherewithal to be able to afford college. We were grateful that once my mother had gotten a factory job and she had worked cleaning homes and taking care of daycare children, that we no longer needed public assistance, but she certainly could not afford a college education. So I was more than ecstatic to get that letter from the University of Tennessee saying that I was accepted and that I got the scholarship, because that was my opportunity to move beyond my current situation in life. I chose chemical engineering, not because I had a love of chemistry at the time. I mentioned that we had the opportunity to co-op, and so the company that was closest to my hometown was 3M in Decatur, Alabama, and it only wanted chemical engineers. And so it was in that moment that I decided, okay, I guess chemical engineering is going to be my major. So my first quarter in school, I had a graphics class, and I struggled. The other classes were fine, but I struggled with that graphics class. And I realized I could not see hidden lines. And that was my confirmation that, yep, whatever you thought about civil engineering, it was not for you. And so I embraced my chemical engineering curriculum. And it was certainly challenging, but a great time to really learn new things. But I just want to emphasize again that my starting point was just that, a starting point. And it didn't define what my end point, still doesn't define my end point. And so if there are any of you who are coming from some challenging situations, just know that you can rise above them and achieve great things as long as you put your mind and your heart to it. So I made engineering work for me because I have come to realize that I love learning, and with that I love change. And I chose my first company out of college because they offered me the opportunity to change jobs and to do a different kind of chemical engineering work every 2 years. I would also change businesses as well as change physical locations. So I knew for 2 years I could endure anything. But I think that's where I learned that I thrive on change and wanting to see and understand how things are done differently. So in the first 6 years of my career was when I actually had an engineering in my title, and I did the process engineering, did environmental engineering, things that were definitely in the chemical engineering space. But I could make those changes with confidence because I was grounded on a firm engineering foundation where I knew how to think, I knew how to problem solve, I could use data to make sound business decisions, all because of that engineering foundation. And so I initially was an engineer. I then recruited engineers, and eventually I collaborated with engineers who supported my manufacturing operations. But I learned in that particular role that I really enjoyed the management side of things, getting things done through other people. And so I made a pivot and started going down the sales marketing roads and had jobs in those where I remember when I first moved to Memphis, we were selling chemicals to treat bugs and weeds, all of the things that can negatively impact plants. And so that was a part of what we were doing. So I was still in the sales and marketing. And so those were ways where I was reconnecting to the chemistry, but not necessarily doing it. Again, getting things done through other people. But I've been very grateful for that engineering career because it has allowed me to do these various things. And I did shift from the chemical industry to the transportation. My first job at FedEx was a process improvement leader. And so who knows processes better than a chemical engineer? So it wasn't a major shift. And I'm continuing to grow and learn, but I'm grateful that the engineering degree has given me the versatility to change. And so I would just end by saying, I know how to get along and live humbly, and I know how to enjoy abundance and live in prosperity. And so that's because I am divinely powered by an internal GPS system that orders my step, and I just have to follow. And just like with your Garmin, if you go off track, it will reroute you, but sometimes it's painful with those rerouting. So I would encourage all of you to step into some higher power and be guided, but knowing that you can move beyond whatever your circumstances, that you are going to have to do some things that others didn't do so that you can get what they didn't have. And I didn't talk about that. And so maybe afterwards, we can share. But then also you don't have to know exactly where you're going as long as you're moving forward. So with that, I wish all of you the very best. Certainly welcome any questions that you would have. Thank you, Dr. Painter.
Thank you, Miss Gray. And I'm just going to go ahead and say it. God is good. How about that? And amen all over that. So we will have time for questions for Dr. Johnson and Miss Gray here in a few minutes. Is Mariah McCullough in our session? I was trying to see if I saw her. She's supposed to be up next with a presentation on her research. Mariah, if you're here, let me know. I didn't see her in.
I don't see her,
Mr.
Dr.
Fitzpatrick, do you know? Okay, maybe she got lost in another room, I'm not sure. So we're supposed to have an oral research presentation from students in each of these breakout sessions, and Mariah is from Lane College, and she did some research on isolation and characterization of antibiotic-resistant bacteria from the Lane College soil. So that's always cool when you have an opportunity to do research on your own campus, and you can provide your school with data about things that goes on with their campus. So if she joins us, we'll give her a chance to jump in here. But I have been informed that they are extending the breakout session for an additional 5 minutes. So we have until 12:20. So that actually leaves us, and now without the student, the oral presentation of the student, we're actually right back on track. So let me go ahead and open it to questions. And if there are any other points that Ms. Gray or Dr. Johnson or any of our panelists want to make, or not panelists, any of our participants want to make, we'll be glad to do that. So if you have questions, you're welcome to come off mute and ask them, or if you'd rather type them in the chat box, that would be fine too. Do we have any questions from the floor? Because I'll ask them if we don't. I'll be quiet for a second and give you all a chance to jump in. Anybody want to unmute themselves? My timer's still on. Okay, I have a question for Ms. Gray. In your introduction that Ms. Robinson read about you, I think that's where it was. She said that you were a 6 Sigma black belt. And I'm pretty sure that's not karate, but if it is, I'm impressed. No, I know what it is, but could you share with the rest of the group what that means and what it's, what kind of doors it may have opened for you? And yeah, I'll just leave it at that.
Okay, thank you. No, it's not karate, so I haven't learned that, but it's a methodology that's used to help problem solve. And so it looks at, and we've modified within FedEx to match our culture. And so within 6 Sigma, I'm thinking it's DMAIC. So you define what your problem is, DM, you measure. So you have to make sure that you have a way of knowing what's happening and what's not. A is analyze. So then you're looking at that data and you're slicing it here, there, and yonder to figure out what learnings can come that will point you to the root cause of your problem. DMAI. I is improved. So once you figured out the solution, then you implement it to make sure that you are reducing or adding to whatever improvement is. And C is control, and that is putting any kind of measures in place to make sure that whatever change you've made sticks. And so it is just a methodical way of problem solving. And what it does is helps to make sure people are looking at data to drive decisions versus shooting from the hips. And it takes emotions out of situations, because when there's conflict, sometimes people are basing it on how they're feeling about something and not looking at the facts. So it helps to take the emotions out to say, okay, now let's look at this objectively to see what we need to do. And so it just provides that great framework of problem solving. And when companies adopt it, it's usually to help make sure that everybody's on the same page and understand. So when you come to a meeting and you're talking about a problem, it's easier to get to what's going on because everybody knows the language. And so with that, there are a number of different tools that are provided. And a lot of those tools have always existed, but somebody just decided to package them together. So you've heard of Pareto charts, where you're looking at what are the most frequent items that occur down to the smallest. There may be Gantt charts where from a project management perspective, you're using those to understand, okay, what's my quickest path and where might there be constrictions to getting to a point. So there are different tools like that. And even design of experiment is used. So instead of just trying one thing at a time and getting results, you may say, okay, here are 3 factors that I want to consider. And you can make, you put them together and randomize or whatever, and you have a recipe to say, I'm doing 3, 2, and 1 in this order, and then 1, 2, and 5, but you're taking the data as you're doing it, because it allows you to more quickly get to a solution to say, okay, this is what's going to drive my additional revenue.
Awesome. And so that's obviously something that FedEx has adopted, but it's not unique to FedEx, right? Many companies use
It's not, no, it actually,
it's a training program you can go through.
Yeah. And a lot of companies will just repackage it and call it something different for selling to, but most of the components you can find anywhere.
That's awesome. Thank you. Any other questions popping up in your own head? Yes, Avion, come off mute. Talk.
I have a question for Ms. Gray and Dr. Johnson. Both of you have spent a significant amount of time in school, and I know for a lot of people like me, still in undergraduate, the idea of doing like 4 more years and like 2 more years for this type of training in this school, it can be kind of a lot to think about. So if you guys can just provide all of us with some advice to kind of keep your head in the game, and just how do you manage all of that schooling, especially when you know you have so much more to go?
I'll let Dr. Johnson talk about it. She probably spent more time in school going straight than I did.
Yeah, so I started school when I was 2 and finished when I was 30. Yeah, so 28 years of school. I didn't, people said that. So when I got ready to go to Purdue, I got my master's, and everybody around me was saying, you need to work. You need experience. So like, you just like going to school. Also, the people around me didn't have PhDs. They also didn't have a full fellowship offered to them and the opportunity to do some amazing work. So I didn't, I think it's a personality and a character kind of thing, but I didn't look at it as, okay, this PhD is going to take me 5 years, or I got to stay in school extra 3 years. Like, first of all, it was free. So yes, because I could quit at any time. Like it was my journey, and I could decide if I didn't want to do it. And I think that's really important, because, when sometimes we're kind of held to a standard, or kind of, we feel pressured to do things, but I knew it was mine. Now I can look back and say that. At the time I was like, no, I got to finish. But I didn't see it as, oh, I have this many more years of school. It was that I'm here at this moment doing this thing. And once I finish, here are the opportunities that will be available to me. So, 5 years, because I also looked at it as, I stopped. If I wanted to do the PhD, I wanted to have the opportunity of the PhD allotted. And, you know, in 5 years, what would I be doing for the next 5 years if I didn't do a PhD? Probably working in a company. And, you know, if it's a pay thing, I would make X amount of money. But given the PhD, I get all of this experience and this network and all these opportunities, plus the payment once I finish. Plus, I mean, more than what I would have made in that 5 years. You know, and just about, you know, what is it that you want to do? When you have a goal, you know, things on that path may look hard, it may look tiring, but you keep your eye on that goal. I don't think that years kind of, you know, doctors, like medical doctors go to school for 8, 9 years, and, you know, nobody's questioning like, oh, wow, you know, you're going to school for that long, because we all think about, well, they're going to make a lot of money and they're going to, like, you know, they're going to be working on people and making a difference in the world. So if you're, you know, thinking about a PhD or graduate school, kind of, you know, think about it in that same way. I mean, you are like adding to the body of knowledge and helping the world.
So I would like, Ms. Gray, do you want to talk to that a little bit? Or
Well, I was going to say, I was not
go ahead.
straight through school. So I worked for 10 years before I went back and got an MBA. And so my company paid for it. And there are benefits that you have with, you know, certain companies. But you just have to look at what do you want, you know, what's driving you, and what is the situation at the time. Because I know we have gone through a stretch where our graduates, there weren't many opportunities. And so graduate school was another avenue to take, because they couldn't get the kinds of jobs that they were wanting. So it's a situational thing, but definitely you got to figure out, what's my passion, to know, is this something that I'm going to be able to do? Because if it's truly your passion, you'll figure out how to maneuver your way through it. It may be hard sometimes, but you'll know that I'm shooting for this end goal, and so therefore you'll be motivated to stick it out.
Great. I was going to follow up with that, and you've actually both talked kind of to both ends of this. And for me, I know you didn't ask me, but I'm going to chime in here anyway because we have time. For me, to stop, like I did basically like Dr. Johnson. I went to school. I'm still in school, right? I teach now, so I've been in school all my life, all 50 years of it. But for me to stop, I don't think I would have gone back. And so you have to know you, and you have to know, you know, what drives you. And so I went into the PhD program directly from my bachelor's, and in science, oftentimes that's very possible. And you get what's called a master's in passing. And so for 5 years while I was working on my PhD, I also acquired a master's as well, by working on an original proposal, and that you have to defend that and all of that stuff. And so that could have been a good stopping point for me. But like I say, for me, I knew that if I stopped, I don't think I would be as disciplined as Ms. Gray and have come back, because you get out there and you're working, and maybe you have a family, and, you know, you have bills, and it's just hard to get yourself to go back. Like right now, to think for me to go sit in a classroom and like have to take tests again, I just don't know, you know, I have a hard enough time sometimes sitting through, you know, presentations and stuff. Now this one has been fantastic, but you know, sometimes when you're sitting through a faculty meeting or something, you're like, oh, I can never just go sit through lectures anymore, you know? So it's tough though, but I will tell you this, time passes really fast. Like you get in there and 5 years later and you're like, where did those 5 years go? You know, so it's right now it seems like, you know, oh, is there a light at the end of the tunnel? And there will be, but just take it in bite-sized pieces, right? The old adage, how do you eat an elephant? One bite at a time, right? It's going to take you a while. You're not going to be able to do it all in one chunk, but you just break it up. How do you write a research paper? You have to start somewhere. You need a thesis, you know, you need to outline it. And so it's just break it up. And so that, I think, goes along with planning for your future as well. And another point that I wanted to make, Dr. Johnson mentioned she had fellowships to go through graduate school. And there are fellowships out there, especially for minority students, minority females in particular, in all STEM disciplines. But I will tell you this, that in graduate school, especially for the sciences, you can do that for free. Like, you should not pay for graduate school. There are if you're having to pay for graduate school, you don't need to go to that graduate school, because there are graduate schools where you serve as a teaching assistant And so not only do you have tuition waived for your PhD, you also get paid. Like, it didn't cost me a dime to get a PhD from Vanderbilt University. And when I told people I went to Vanderbilt, they're like, oh, you must be rich or smart. And I'm like, well, not really either, but I just determined to do both of these, right? Because they pay for you. That you work as a teaching assistant, and you get paid for that, a living stipend. And I mean, it wasn't too bad even when I did it. I was able to live on that. And then you get picked up by a research group, and then you become a research assistant. So you don't have to teach anymore. You actually get paid to do your research. So if you don't bring your own money, like I say, there are fellowships that it's like your own money, and you get to decide where you go, and you say, I'm going to go to Purdue, and I'm bringing my own money with me. And so you're even that much more attractive to them because you're not going to cost them anything. Or they have money, they have money for graduate school. So don't ever pay for graduate school. Now, medical school, that's a little different. And I know that's what your path is, but Dr. Johnson, you came off mute. Do you have something you want to add to that?
Yeah, I think it's important. I do not think you should pay for school, especially if you are in STEM fields. There are lots and lots of fellowships for STEM majors and especially underrepresented students. I remember, I talked about being hard. I think it was like my second month at Purdue. My then advisor, we were in a meeting, and she, out of nowhere, just like, have you thought about industry? Maybe the PhD isn't for you. And I'm like, what? And I decided then that, I'd already decided, but I was like, oh yeah, I'm definitely getting this PhD. But one of the things is that I had my own funding. And if at any point she decided that, I was no longer a part of her research group, or if I wanted to do something different with my research, that funding could have been cut. If I couldn't find a graduate assistantship as a teacher. And I was very thankful for that, which is also, I was confused. I was like, you don't even pay me. Like, I have my own funding, but I think it's, outside funding, outside meaning, so there's university funding being a graduate assistantship or a research assistantship where you teach classes or you do research with professors and they pay you and they pay your tuition. And then you can apply for fellowships, for grants for your studies. And that way, some of them have requirements, like you may have to do an internship or write papers or, keep a certain GPA. But that money is yours. It does not belong to a professor, to the university. It all comes to you. And so that's exactly what I had. I actually had 2 fellowships. So I was very blessed to have 2 outside fellowships that paid me throughout my entire PhD.
Awesome. Thanks for sharing that. Just to let everybody know, Mariah McCullough did not blow us off today. She's having internet issues, so she was not able to join our meeting. But do I have any other questions from any of the folks in the room, the virtual room? Anything in the chat? Anybody want to unmute themselves? You get a chance to talk in front of these people. There's only about 25 of us in here, so don't be scared. Okay, while y'all are thinking of a possible question, you can just type it in the chat. I would like to give Dr. Johnson an opportunity to tell us a little bit about her kidult life, entrepreneurial endeavor, if she would take a minute to let us know what that's about.
Yeah, I love talking about the kidult life.
Right.
So kidult is like kid and adult, and I'm a big kid, and so I started the kidult life after finishing my PhD, kind of during, and the kidult life is about being who you are no matter where you are. So I created it from through my experiences of going to Purdue and being the only Black woman in my classes, and my hair changing every day. Like a lot of these things I didn't recognize about myself until other people pointed it out to me. And that's when I realized, I was like, oh, okay, I'm different, whatever that means. But I realized like all of those differences, all of those unique parts of me helped me on that journey. Like, I was able to just, me being me, help build relationships between my department and other organizations. So now students have opportunities to do research because I reached out and said, hey, I want to work with y'all. And, you know, or doing things around campus. And just, you know, I decided, I know we talk about code switching and being in a professional environment and, you know, having to feel like, especially with Black women, feeling like, you know, you need to be someone else. I remember the moment when I decided I wasn't going to code switch. And it was when somebody made a comment about my hair and, you know, and what I look like. And I thought, you know, this is me, this is who I am. And I wasn't going to change it. And that's not to say that, you know, to be disrespectful to others or, you know, to kind of go against what the rules are, but just, you know, I took my whole self into everything that I did. Even when it came down to my dissertation defense. I did my dissertation defense on Facebook Live. Like, I didn't realize this was like a big thing until after it was over because my family couldn't come. And they didn't know that I was doing research about the disease that ultimately, you know, that my aunt passed from. So I wanted them to see this. And this was like a shift in the department because like almost 100 people attended my defense. And this was like the first time this happened. And, you know, and I was, you know, told to, you know, academics present in this way. And these are the things that you say. And I was so frustrated. I could not get my dissertation together. I couldn't get my presentation together. And I was talking to my friends and I'm presenting and they had all these questions and they were like, what are you trying to say? So in frustration, this is what it is. This is what my research is and how I got there. And they were like, say that. And I was like, I can say that? And so I said it. And that's how I defended. I told my story and my research was actually a story. And it turned out to be this amazing thing. And so the adult life, you know, when I thought about this, you know, as kids, we kind of just try anything. We are curious about things. We are fearless until, you know, someone or society tells us that we can't do something. And so I'm like, why can't we be like kids? Like, why can't we just try what we want to try? Why can't we just walk up to people and say, hey, you look cool. Can we be friends? I literally make a lot of friends. Like I've made almost all my friends like this. And so it's just about being who you are no matter where you are. So if, you know, there's no seat for you at the table and you bring your own chair. If there's no room for your chair, you build your own table. You know, you take all of you into whatever you do because those experiences happen for a reason. And yeah, so that's how I created the Adult Life.
That's awesome. Any other questions? Or let's see, Ms. Robinson has asked, how has COVID-19 affected your work/field work? We can ask that to both Dr. Johnson and Ms. Gray.
Let's see, well, I am back in my office, but initially we were quarantined or I had attended a conference, and when I came back, got a message saying somebody had tested positively. So I was self-quarantined for 14 days before the rest of the world shut down. But I came back to the office in at the end of May. The most difficult part is I work, my husband works, and we have a daughter, 15, and she's a special needs child. And so she requires one-on-one attention. So this whole notion of saying, you're gonna teach this child, it's like, it can't happen. So we would just have to do things when we could, because we have to be sitting right there with her. So now school has started and we were just thrilled because she was regressing in some of her speech, especially. So school started and she was able to go full-time in person. And after a week, there were some positive cases mentioned. And so we got a message, let's say Wednesday, there's 3 cases. Friday night, there are 2 more cases, you're a cluster. So then by Sunday night, we got a message saying, we have 8 cases now and we're shutting the school down. So for the next 2 weeks, everybody has to stay home. And my husband went and picked up this box of stuff and I'm reading, it's like, oh, so you expect me to do this from 8 to 2:30 every day and I have a job. So we, you know, it was very hard because my husband would be home during the day, the first half of the day, and I'd have to come home the second half. and then their meetings. And so we had night school. So it is a very difficult thing, especially if you don't have the ability for your child to sit and do what they're supposed to do. So I have a huge appreciation to any parent who is struggling, trying to make sure that their child is getting the necessary education, because it's not easy. My employers and my bosses have been very flexible and handle your business, do what you need to do. But it's been hard trying to struggle and keep your mind focused on any one thing, because you're just transitioning constantly.
Yeah, I think it's really shown us all.
Sick.
Yeah, that's good. I think it's
Yeah,
really shown us all
sick.
that we have to think out of the box, right? Dr. Johnson, you haven't, could you add to that? Have you changed modes, or we really haven't talked about what you're doing currently? You're working at Northwood?
So with my job, we were off for a few months, and I was fortunate to still, keep my salary. So I was extremely blessed by that. And we didn't have the ability to work from home, so I was just kind of at home. And I took that time to, do things that I wanted to do. So I learned a new programming language, and I worked on the adult life, worked on the business and growing that. I actually made some connections through social media with people, and that made some really good friends. I think being in grad school, and I didn't really do much anyway before I got into grad school. I like to play basketball. That's pretty much my outlet. And so I guess kind of being by myself and working on a specific thing, I had done that for so long that when, the shutdown happened, me being at home wasn't new for me. So I was kind of happy to be at home.
It's not bad, right? Once you get used to it.
Yeah.
Okay, thanks. So we're going to have to wrap up here shortly. If there are any other questions, please feel free to put them in the chat box. We've got all this new language now, right? This chat box and unmute yourself and all these new, things that we never even said, 12 months ago. Yeah, were you gonna say something, Dr. Johnson? Yeah,
I do want to say, if anybody, if I'm not sure if my information is in the program.
It's in the program.
Okay, great. So, feel free to reach out to me if you have any questions, need any advice or mentoring. I am always here for the cause. I'm definitely eager to pour back into people, because so many people have poured into me, including Dr. Painter. And check out the Adult Life.
We do have Adult Life. We do have a question that just came in for you, actually, and it says, first, I would like to applaud you for being the first Black woman to graduate with a PhD in computer science, and so I kudos that. What base of support did you have to help you navigate through the challenges of being a minority at Purdue?
Oh my gosh, mentorship and community is so important. I cannot stress how important mentorship is. I have a food therapist. I call one of my friends my food therapist when I go places and I want to eat. I'm like, what should I eat? But mentors happen to just kind of show up for me when I needed them, and all of your mentors don't look the same, right? So you may have a mentor that guides you through your graduate program through research, and you may have a mentor that helps you with job or life, And so I remember being at Grace Hopper Women in Computing. It's the largest women in computing conference. And it was my first year. I was so, I just knew I was going to flunk out. That was it. I wasn't going to do it. And so I went to this conference, and Dr. Valerie Taylor, I think she's the Dean of Engineering or something at Texas A&M, where she was at the time. She did a keynote. And so I'm like, I got to talk to this Black woman afterwards. I have to. So I'm excited. She's, this very important person. And afterwards, I wait for her. And so she comes out, I'm sitting, and I'm like, I want to talk to you, So I started talking to them like, I'm a PhD student in computer science at Purdue. And I just started crying. I was so embarrassed because I don't know how to cry. I try to hold it so I ugly cry. So she just sits there, she's looking at me, and she takes a tissue and she hands it to me, and I wipe my face and I'm crying. I cried for it was so embarrassing. I cried for 5 minutes. But I talked to Dr. Taylor, And she was very supportive and very helpful, and I stayed in contact with her. And then I met Dr. Jamaica Burge, who is now a friend and mentor, she called me when she was piloting Black Girls Rock Tech and asked me to come on board and help create this program. And so, but she told me, if you ever need anything, I'll fly you out to DC. I understand the PhD program. If you need food, you need, whatever. So I had these people who, were very supportive of me. My advisor was not very supportive. And so I actually had a mentor, a professor in a different department in agriculture, had nothing to do with computer science, who I would meet with weekly. And we would talk about my research and talk about what I wanted to do. And so I actually didn't have the support at the time within my department, the mentorship. So I found it. I found people in my field. I found people that looked like me, people who had gotten PhDs, people who had gone for PhDs and quit, people who had finished. Like I was just kind of searching, but ultimately the mentors that I had kind of found me when I really needed. So I think, definitely networking with people. If you see somebody who's doing something that you want to do, I encourage you to reach out to them. The worst they can tell you is, no, I don't want to talk to you. And then that hurts your pride, and then you keep going,
You find somebody else who will, right?
Exactly.
That's awesome. So moral to the story, and it kind of goes back to one of the first points that Ms. Gray made, is as long as you're moving forward, you're going in the right direction, right? You might have to do some course correction. You might be going off in a tangent that you weren't meant to go in, but you keep moving, right? Don't just stop. Don't be stagnant. So that's awesome. So I've got that it's 12:15. I want to thank everybody for attending our session. I hope that you've heard some words of encouragement. That was really my goal, was not to do the water drop on the penny thing, but that was fun anyway. But it was just to kind of to spark some stirring in your soul that might say, you know what, if they can do it, I can do it, right? And so we have Ms. Gray who did it a while back, and she's been through many different fields, and that's okay, and that's not a bad thing. She's moving forward, she's progressing, she's happy where she is, and I applaud her for that. And then we have Dr. Johnson, who's a freshly minted PhD, and we're really proud to see that happen, and look forward to seeing where she goes with all of this. And again, each of them have taken time out of their day to come and talk to you about how they got where they are. And I'm grateful for them, and I'm grateful that they are willing to give back. And again, their contact information is in the program booklet, and I know that they would be happy to talk off to the side with you anytime. You shoot them an email. And I think Dr. Johnson has quite demonstrated that networking is key, right? I mean, like if she didn't have that person pushing her to apply to the program, she never even would have gotten in, right? So and that's through networking, and that's through knowing people, and that was somebody who hooked her up with that person. I mean, she didn't know that person. She didn't just sit around in her little room and say, oh, I think I'll pick up the phone and call so-and-so. No, it's through networking that happens. And so if you are fearful of speaking out and talking to people, you got to practice it. And so practice it with your friends, just have a little conversation of an icebreaker, or they call it an elevator speech. If somebody asks you what you're doing, what you're up to, what do you have passion for, just kind of have those little pat speeches kind of ready to go, because you never know who you're going to run into. Even did you say it was on an airplane that you talked to somebody? I mean, nowhere have you met a stranger. So I think it's important that don't be embarrassed, don't be afraid, and reach out. Just, you got to get engaged if you want to keep moving forward. So I think they're going to move us into the next session. So if everybody wants to hang on, I think the closing session is only about 10 or 15 minutes long. So if you want to hang on and move into that closing session with us, I think that they are going to do that for us. So any last thoughts? We have 2 minutes before they're going to move us. Anyone?
I would just say,
it's Friday.
Be courageous. I've just enjoyed Dr. Johnson. I love her energy. And,
right.
and so when somebody comes to you with that kind of energy, you want to do everything that you can help them to do. So if we have some introverts, because I'm an introvert, I've learned to be an extrovert when I need to, but I'm an introvert. get out of that shell, push yourself, and do it in places where it is safe, as Dr. Painter just said. But telling your story is going to be a key fundamental skill for the rest of your life, because people want to hear stories, because that is what's going to really draw them in and make you a compelling option for whatever it is that you're doing. So if you're not comfortable yet, get there.
Yep, and it takes practice. It's not everybody's born with it. So, all right. So with that, I'm going to say thank you, and I'm going to. You don't leave the meeting. I think there's. Oh wait, we can leave the room though.
You can leave the room. Yeah.
Yes, you can leave.
Okay, so we can leave the room, and it'll take us back into the general session.
Yes.
So the little blue button that says leave the room, and I'll see y'all over in the next room.
All right.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you. Thank you so much.